Assalamualaikum and good day to Miss Moon and my fellow classmates. So my name is Siti Fatimah Zahra Binti Mohamad Ziyad. My metric number is 2019883968. So today I'll be presenting my lesson plan and material development for the lesson. Okay, so for the table of contents, so for today I will start my presentation with introduction, which I will share to you my lesson information and lesson objective. Then I'll move to pre-lesson. Then for the lesson development, then I will show you my post-lesson, then lastly my classroom layout. Okay, so before jumping into introduction, so this lesson is based on the novel The Elephant Man. It is a literature component of Form 3. So The Elephant Man is based on a true story. It is the story of the life of a man named Joseph Merrick who lived in England in the 19th century. So the novel presents Merrick's life from the point where Dr. Frederick Traves discovers him until his death. Merrick is not an ordinary man. He suffers from a disease that causes him to be deformed. It is called the Elephant Man. People fear him, but they pay to look at him. Dr. Traves takes Merrick to the hospital where he examines Merrick but is unable to help. The Elephant Man disappears after that, and 2 years later, Merrick turns up at the hospital. With generous donations from the public, Merrick gets a home at the hospital. He meets new friends and receives a lot of books. He then leads a happy and contented life for 3.5 years. Then in April 1890, he is found dead in his bed. He broke his neck because he was trying to sleep on his back like a normal person. Okay, that's a little bit of synopsis about the Elephant Man. Okay, so now for the introduction for my lesson information, it is for Form 3 students, which is the level of B1 Law. The lesson is specifically for 30 students of Form 3. It is a non-textbook based lesson, which is lesson 50. So for the topic, it is based on the novel The Elephant Man. The focus skill is literature, and the dramatic technique that I got is role play and simulation. Okay, so for content and learning standard, for the content standard, for the main skill is literature in action 5.1, which is engage with, respond to, and interpret a variety of literary text types. Therefore, learning standard, also the main skill, literature in action 5.1.2, explain briefly the development of plot, characters, and themes in the text. Okay, so now moving on to my learning objective. At the end of the lesson, students should be able to firstly identify themes in the Elephant Man, then perform a role play based on the given scenario, then lastly, write a personal short essay based on a character from the novel. Okay, moving on to my pre-lesson stage. So the teacher will start greet the students, then teachers will recap last week's lesson. Then teacher will start off the class by playing charades. There will be 4 cards. These cards have the name of the characters from the Elephant Man. Then 4 random students will be called out in front to hold the card to guess why the other students need to act the characteristic of the character. So for example, a card on Dr. Trafnam. So therefore, the students can act like a doctor for the students who holds the card until the one who hold the card get the correct guess. Then the charades will have 4 rounds since there will be 4 characters. Then teacher will add space to this lesson. So rationale for this pre-lesson activity is according to Rahma and Aesthetic 2020. The game of charades is described as the value of the thoughts in which it is usually communicated more effectively through non-verbal and physical means than through verbal means. Physical non-verbal cues like motion and follow-up can be promoted for interest, peak, and correspondence. So the assessment and likelihood of students trying what they're taught in class will increase. Okay, now moving on to the materials. So these are the materials. So there will be 4 cards on the 4 characters, which is John Merrick, Dr. Frederick Traves, Cargom, and Mrs. Kendall. So the 4 students who get to hold the card in front will have to guess the name while the other students in front will act it out. That's all for the charades game. Okay, now moving on to my lesson development. So for the first activity, which is activity 1, teacher will start off with introducing the topic of the day, which is the theme of the Elephant Man. Then teacher will teach on how to find the theme and how it is different from the main idea based on the novel. Then teacher will give out an info paper on the literary element of the theme. I will show you later the materials. Then teacher asks questions such as, what do you think of the main events of the novel? Which main events contribute to finding out the theme from the novel? What do you think is the author's intention? What message does the author wants to deliver? Then the students will be given about 4 minutes to discuss with a small group of 3 to jot down the theme and which main events contributed to the theme on the whiteboard. Then the final 3 themes will be discussed together with the teacher. Then students will express their opinion on which themes are suitable to be the 3 themes for the novel. Then teacher will conclude the final themes among the other themes suggested on the whiteboard. The expected final themes are firstly power of kindness, secondly characters versus appearance, then respect each other without prejudice. Then teacher will prepare them for the next stage. So rationale for this activity, asking questions can help students to determine their ideas and thoughts as it unlocks critical thinking and innovative thinking. Okay, so now moving on to my activity 2. Okay, so before moving on to activity 2, these are the materials, so the whiteboard and also the literary element of the theme. So this info paper will be used by the teacher to engage students about the theme. Teacher will also teach the student on the theme based on these subtopics, which is as in the info paper. So this info paper is adopted from the website www.readwriting.org. Okay, so now moving on to activity 2, which is a role play activity, but not yet. Okay, so this is before role play activity. So first, teacher will introduce their students to the next activity, which is a role play. Then teacher will explain how role play works to the students. Then teacher will demonstrate a short example role play on a scenario where a doctor needs to call an important organization to ask for a fund for a special patient at the hospital. This scenario is based on the events from the novel. Then after teacher has done demonstrating this scenario, the teacher will divide the class into groups of 3. So there will be about 10 groups since the class has 30 students. Then the teacher will give out the scenario, which is, you are a doctor at the London hospital. You and a nurse have a duty to examine a patient in a special room. The patient has a condition that is different from others. So it is your first time seeing a patient like this, like this. As you and the nurse get into the room, both of you are shocked to see the patient. So the goal from this scenario is uh, for the doctor and the nurse to respect the patient as he is. So there will be 3 students. One student will act as a patient. So one student will act as a doctor, then another student will act as a nurse. So then teacher will give out the students a few minutes to think about the scenario and to just indulge them in before they need to construct their own dialogues on the given scenario. The students need to construct at least 10 until 15 dialogues per group. Okay, moving on to role play activity. The students will then prepare themselves for the role play activity. Taking turns, the students will present the role play to the class. Teacher will examine the use of their language and give feedback accordingly. So, and based on the role play, the teacher will ask what has they discovered by doing the role play. Teacher will also explain that the scenario which they have done earlier is based on a theme of respect each other without prejudice. And then she will prepare them for the next stage. So the rationale behind the role play activity is role play encourages students to think more critically about complex and controversial subjects and to see situations from a different perspective. And also role plays can motivate students to learn in a fun and engaging way. Okay, so now moving on to activity 4. So for the last activity, students will be given a word search activity where they are 10 words related to the novel. Then the students need to complete a passage using their words. After this activity, the teacher will assign students another activity. So the another activity is on creative writing, where the students need to write an expressive writing on how would you feel if you are in Joseph Merritt's shoes? So this activity requires students to express their feelings in writing, and then the students can also use or relate the main three themes with their point of view that to be to be shown into their in their expressive writing. Then the students needs to construct at least 6 sentences for the short essay. After the writing session, the teacher will instruct a few students to read out their short essay to the class. Then at last, teacher will give general feedback for other activities for the lesson. So the rationale behind this activity is expressive writing, which emphasizes the personal viewpoint and free-flowing stream of consciousness that comes with the therapeutic writing session. Okay, so now for the materials, so these are the worksheet and the word search. Then they need to complete the passage, and the whiteboard is for the teacher to write the question. So the worksheet it is adopted from the Elephant Man textbook or book. Okay, so now moving on to my post lesson. So in my post lesson, teacher will conclude and recap the lesson. Then teacher restates all the 3 main objectives that the students have achieved for the lesson. Then teacher will give overall feedback on the students' performance of the day. Then teacher initiates curiosity for the upcoming class. Okay, so now that's all for my lesson plan. Okay, so now moving on to my classroom layout, which is herringbone style. So I have proposed to use herringbone style of classroom layout because firstly, it will be easy for my students to work with the tasks since most of the tasks that I have structured, it needs group of 3, so students can work easily with groups in their role. So 3 students in a row, so they can just work with their role mates. Then secondly, students can also give full attention to the teacher that is teaching in front since their degree of the table. It's just that the students' eye will be aimed to just focusing on the teacher in front. Also, at last, during the role play activity, students can choose either to perform at their seat or in front of their classroom according to their comfortability. So I think that's all for my sharing session on my lesson plan and material development. That's all from me. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy my sharing session. So thank you.